Okay, I think we'll let people to continue to join us, but let's begin. We don't want to go a little too late. Again, my name is Howard Singer. I'm one of the associate directors of undergraduate admission at Boston College, and thrilled to be able to work with this panel and to be able to talk to all of you students. I've been at Boston College for 38 years and have been the person who's made many of the decisions in the New York area going on over 30 years. We know this is a really challenging time for families. You have until May 1st to decide where you want to go. We have very limited opportunities to be on our campus. So I think this is sort of the beginning week of a barrage of wonderful virtual programming. We hope you will attend as many as you see fit and that you think are relevant to your interests and your needs. But this is always a very, very popular one that we have done in the past year or two now, because so many people are interested in Boston College from New York City, and irrespective of whether they come from New York City initially, a lot of people want to get their first jobs in the city. And so we like to assemble a panel of people who good representatives of that we think you'll find really, really interesting and helpful for you to ultimately determine, as the month goes along, is Boston College going to be a good place for you to call home for the next 4 years? And we hope you'll have some questions you can put in the Q&A, and we will go through them and try to get through as many as we can in the time that we have. So what I want to do at this point is to ask all of our panelists to introduce themselves to you, and then we'll start using the questions that you sent to us. So without further ado, Kim, you may start, please.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Akim St. Omer, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, graduated from Little Red Elizabeth Irwin High School in 2002, and then Boston College in 2006, where I majored in communications and minored in African American studies. After graduating Boston College, my career took off and I went and worked in various different educational nonprofit and charter school organizations. Currently, I am the lead market outreach specialist for the Girl Scouts of Greater New York. As typical with nonprofits, there's multiple words in your title, but essentially what I do is try to figure out ways to bring the Girl Scout experience to various parts of New York City. In addition to leading so that's been my boss.
First time I remember when I was in your shoes, I was for Boston College. And even though I was early action, I still kind of waited to the end to make the final decision because I was just like, oh, this is such a big decision in my life. I graduated, I'm from Wheaton, Maryland, a suburb of Washington, D.C., graduated from Boston College in 2004 with a degree similar to Kim, just like Kim actually, in communications and minor in African American studies. I didn't have myself quite figured out. Right after graduation, I worked for a year, then I went to grad school at the University of Maryland to get a broadcast journalism degree. And then I've been working in local news ever since then. So right now I am a local news reporter, fill-in anchor at the local CBS affiliate here in New York City. So I'm so happy to be here and
Am I next, Howard? Sorry. Hey, everyone. And again, congratulations. This is a humongous deal. My name is Jorge Mejia. I graduated from Boston College in 2019, so somewhat fresh off the boat. I am originally from the Bronx, New York. I went to a small public school in the South Bronx. Currently, I have been launching my career at UBS Wealth Management, where I work in the investment banking division. And my long-term career goal is to be a lawyer, so definitely not in the financial service sector. So I'll be enrolling in law school next fall.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelsey Todd. As Jorge just said, congratulations on being accepted to Boston College. It's incredible. I am from Long Island, just about an hour outside of Manhattan, but live in Manhattan now. I went to a small Catholic school out there, graduated from Boston College in 2014 with a degree in English and environmental studies. And I currently work at Away. So we are a travel lifestyle brand. You might be familiar with our luggage, or if you're not, you can spot it at the airport next time you safely travel. But I work in social impact. So basically that means working with nonprofits like the Girl Scouts of Greater New York, and working on volunteer efforts and helping to invest in making a positive impact in our communities. So as everyone has said, excited to answer your questions tonight.
Hey, everybody.
Hi.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, everyone. No, you're good. I think I got that alphabetical order correct. My name is Megan Lynch. I graduated from Boston College in 2008. I grew up in Westchester County and went to a small all-girls school. I now live in New York City, and I've been here for quite some time. After graduating, I was an NBC page, and I got my feet wet in production and TV. And from there, I started working in different production companies, commercials, reality TV, all the while continuing to audition. Oh, I didn't tell you, I was a double major in English and theater with a minor in French. So that is kind of my path prior. I did a lot of theater. And then after graduating, I went from the NBC Page program, worked in television production, other production companies, commercial production companies, and now I am an actress and voiceover artist and host in New York City. And I am very, very jealous of all of you that are getting to make this exciting decision and have the option to go to Boston College. It's amazing. Congratulations.
All righty. Hey guys, I'm Tom, and clearly very eager to introduce myself. I graduated from Boston College in 2017. I'm from Westchester, New York, a small town called Tuckahoe, which is maybe 30 minutes outside of New York City, if you're not familiar. While I was at BC, I was an English major and had double minors, kind of eclectic interests in American studies and in theology. Just like Meg, when I graduated from BC, I was an NBC Universal page, so I gave tours. Yeah, crazy. I didn't know that either. I gave tours of the studios, worked audience services for The Tonight Show Starring Jimmy Fallon and Late Night with Seth Meyers. Did about 6 months at SNL. I worked as a desk page, doing anything and everything that the cast and the host and the musical guest needed, which was a great introduction to my career in media. After my time at NBC, I worked at Discovery, more specifically on the Food Network and on-air talent management. So my team was basically the liaison between the company and all of our talent, be they hosts, judges, presenters, sometimes competitors too. So again, kind of acting as the representative of a larger network, working in that talent capacity. So that's been me relatively early on in my career in media, about 4 years out now. So welcome again, guys, and excited to answer your questions.
Thank you all, everybody. Well, my role on this is to manage the talent that I have in front of me right now. So I am going to start. While we wait for questions to come in, there's a couple of things that I think I would like a few of our alumni to talk about. One of them I think is relevant to everybody out there. Can you talk about any advantages you may have experienced by being part of the alumni network and the opportunities that the network grants you, particularly in a place like New York City?
Sure. So I can answer that one. My first role before the Page program was for a small children's production company. And I reached out to, it's called Hit Entertainment, Barney, Thomas the Tank Engine, all the hits. And I reached out to someone that went to Boston College. I had never met her before, but a friend said, "Oh, I know someone that went to BC and I'm sure they'll want to help you." And I met with her, I talked with her, and she said, "Actually, yeah, we do have a position here." So that was my very, very first job, was because of a BC grad. And then my Page program connection led me to work at the Today Show. And this kind of comes full circle because just in contact with since September through the BC network, and she and I have been in touch, and I've been kind of supporting her in her application through the PAGE program, through the NBC Today Show internship program. And she sent me the happiest email on Friday that she got an internship at the Today Show. I connected her with someone months ago, and she really did a wonderful job of kind of keeping up and following through and doing her research. And I think that's what the VC network really does. It promotes connections and staying in touch and asking questions. And everyone is excited to help and is excited to bring you, information. And if there isn't a role for you, they remember and they care. So it really was so exciting for me to see that even so many years outside of going to Boston College, I helped someone get an internship at the Today Show. So it was exciting.
I would encourage if anyone, one or two more want to answer, because that's such a relevant, I think, difference between the Boston College choice and so many other places.
Yeah, I can jump in. When I think back on what made me decide to go to BC, it was the ability to know that if I decided to come back to New York after graduation, that I would have a network that was already built in from the Boston College community. That was important to me. I think back in 2002, when I graduated high school, especially as a result of 9/11 and being a senior in high school, I wanted to feel like I was going with a crew of people to Boston and would be able to come back with a crew of people if I decided to come to New York. And I think that's been my experience. I routinely run into Boston College people in New York City, whether it is people that have graduated way before me who might see me in a t-shirt or a hat, or whether it's somebody young looking to apply. I'm one of those people. I grew up in the inner city, and I always believe in showcasing to people who look like me that opportunities like Boston College are possible. So I'm always walking through my neighborhood in like BC paraphernalia, and I can't tell you how many times little kids look at me and go, "Oh my God, you went to BC? That's such a great school. Let's talk about it." So New York is, I think, outside of Boston, is probably the epicenter of Boston College alumni, and I've run into them in some of the most amazing places and some of the most ridiculous places that I never thought I'd run into a BC alum. But there's always a Boston College person somewhere in New York.
Anyone else want to take a stab at that?
First job out of college, I worked at Kind Snacks, like the Kind bars, and my team there was 4 women and 3 of us went to BC. So I was the second BC person to join the team. That just happened on its own. We didn't realize, but then our third person, she had reached out to us once the role opened, and we were just obviously thrilled to have a BC person coming in. So the 3 of us were just like this little BC contingent all the time at work, which was amazing. But I can echo what Meg said as well. I had exactly the same experience recently. A junior who's at BC right now just reached out to me on LinkedIn saying she wanted to learn about what a career in social impact means. She was interested. We got to talking. We've been in touch for months now, and she just got an internship at Kind in the space. So yeah, exciting. So it's really awesome, as Meg said, to see it all come full circle and be able to give back and be a part of that network for current undergrads or recent graduates.
Thank you, Kelsey. A question came in specifically for Jorge, but I'd be happy to have, after Jorge answers this, he's on edge right now, anyone else talk about this. Boston College, is one of the quintessential liberal arts institutions in the country. So what a person wanted to know, Jorge, was wondering what types of resources did you use to land a job at UBS Wealth Management? Asked a little bit about internships too, but I think that goes to the heart of what you study and what you do after you graduate may not always mesh perfectly. And how does a school potentially prepare you? And of course, I know Jorge, so I know he's got a very good answer for this.
Yeah, no, of course, I think that is a fantastic question, especially as someone, who's, I'm first generation, was low income, and I certainly, I was a poli-sci major, so I was non-traditional on every single front. And so I think sort of to, integrate this to sort of like the last question that was asked, I think what was super helpful for me was, when I was connecting with our, alumni network was not so much that I could know that I could score like an interview at an actual firm, but it was more about how I could transform the humanities skill set that I had developed at BC and in a workforce like finance, right? Because I obviously did not take any financial courses. And so like, I always thought that I was at a certain disadvantage compared to my financial peers. But in talking to people who were, because I work in the legal division, so I don't work in like an sort of investment banking, super technical field, but it was only because I was able to talk to people who graduated from BC who had similar majors as mine, who told me about sort of like the different non-traditional ways in which I could leverage my poli-sci degree. That was the way that I think like the BC network was helpful for me. And so I think if I, as a low-income first-gen kid who didn't even know what Excel, okay, I mean, like I knew, I'm like what Excel was, but you know what I mean? Like if I was able to get a job in IB, then any of you who know those things way before I did, then you just have a way better shot. But yeah, no, like that's probably just like my 2 cents on it, is just that anyone can get into this field thanks to the insight that the BC Alumni Network offers you.
And I would also like to add, it's not just the alumni network, it's your professors. So while I was there, BC's built out its communications program to have more broadcast journalism, I believe now, than when I was there. But I had a professor who was a reporter. And so she really guided me through a lot. Another professor who was a reporter, and his wife was like a big wig in one of the major media companies. And she helped get me an internship the summer before my senior year. And all of those experiences helped, and I'm still in contact with them as I've gone along. I've had a number of moves. My industry requires you to move quite a bit. So I've moved from Macon, Georgia, literally, up to New York, and lots of stops in between. And I've kept up with them. And I was on campus a year and a half ago and had lunch on campus with one of my professors, bounce ideas off of, or say, I don't know what to do next. And she gives me great advice. So it's not just the alumni, there are professors there that you just, link with and make a huge impact long-term.
And I would also add to that as well. I think that my time at BC, perhaps even outside of the network and outside of, the immediate connection space, just gave me a lot of soft skills that were able to put me in position to excel once I got in the room. My first big job interview was for the PAGE program, and they have this kind of notoriously complicated, multifaceted like interview day. And I think the fact that I had spent so much time on campus, learning how to think, learning how to present well, learning how to chime in an English class, all those skills translated much more directly than I might have ever anticipated to a conference room at 30 Rockefeller Plaza, where I was interviewing with a lot of other students or other, graduating seniors who wanted a shot at this entryway in media. So I think that, what you do on campus, the time that you spend interacting with peers who are also at the height of their game, delving into conversation in class, presenting, for me, working in admissions, giving tours, sitting on panels, gave me a lot of tools that, even though I couldn't see the connection when I was doing it on campus at the time, continue to serve me today. So I think that's also pretty key.
I want to sort of jump away a little bit from the alumni networking and networking to something about when you think about the price tag of a private education in America, it's pretty steep. And there are a couple of questions that haven't asked specifically, but sort of are getting around what we would call ROI, the return on investment. So do a few of you want to talk about, for maybe some of the parents put these in there, but it's a legitimate question. If you're thinking about spending, in excess of almost $300,000 for a four-year education, whatever it is that you pay for, can you talk about the return on investment that you think you get? This one requires a little more thought.
Yeah, so I'll kick things off. So I think the return on investment for a BC education is not so much return, but it's return and multiplied in countless ways. So I think what BC does, like any other college, is, you know, it will communicate knowledge to you. Yes, that's a checkbox that every college can do. It will professionally develop you. Yeah, every college can do that. But what I've noticed in the working world, what makes us unique and very competitive, is our ability to integrate those two technical skill sets into a sense of purpose. And that's something that is very accessorial to certain schools. Like, yeah, like you'll have like a prompt or a homework assignment that'll ask you, oh, like, how does this sort of project that we did influence, you know, like social impact or, you know, like the public good? And it seems very accessorial, very, you know, very unnatural sometimes to most people. But I find that those questions are actually really natural to us. And, you know, like one key example I'll highlight is I remember one class. It was by Professor Father Himes, who asked these, you know, he's well known for these, this thing called the three questions, which is what do you like, what are you good at, and what does the world need you to do? Sort of like that, sort of like the why, what, and how of your career path. Every school can teach you poli-sci. Any school can teach you finance. Like that, that's not what you come to BC for. You come to understand how to leverage that uniquely and competitively for the betterment of the world. And I think that that's actually very naturally integrated into the curriculum. Because at first I was like, yeah, like this seems very wishy-washy. Like, I don't really know if I want to do this. But it, like every single class, whether it's finance, poli-sci, every job internship that like you do, BC will actively weave those questions in there so that when you graduate, asking about things like public good, social impact, all those things are just woven into your vocabulary so naturally that you are just better able to navigate the workforce. So return on investment, obviously, but it's way, way more than that. Yeah.
I will never put it that well, so I just want to second everything Jorge just said.
For me, the first thing was that my education did not stop at BC. I learned at BC that we are always learning. And I feel like I have developed and was just given this intense curiosity that we had at BC, and it continues to grow. So at BC, we are told to ask questions. We want to learn more. And if we're interested in something, let's find the professor that might, you know, have some suggestions. Let's look into the class. Let's join the club. Let's try something new. And that's me. I am the multitasker. I am constantly learning new skills. I started taking singing lessons again with my singing teacher from BC. So my education has just begun. I feel like it's still going and every day. But the other piece to me are the people. There is no price tag that you can put on the relationships, the friendships, the professors, the people that you meet at BC want to be there. And they are happy to be there and they are excited. And the big word for me is gratitude, because you walk around the campus and you can feel the spirit. And that's not just the school spirit, but the spirit of caring, the spirit of generosity, the spirit of a BC student wants to help others. I don't know the statistic now, but when I gave tours and panels, I think it was something over 80% of students were involved with community service over their time at BC at one point or another. And that's true for my friends now. All of my friends, the core people that are important in my life that have been there for the ups and downs, the highs and lows, the BC core group are just the most incredible people with the biggest hearts that are there to help, that are so smart, that love my family. I mean, I don't know where I would be without the people that I met at BC, and that includes the professors and that includes the education. I got excited just thinking about everyone out there today, because it's just an invaluable 4 years that I wish I could do again.
I know we talk about return on investment in terms of like how much money you'll make when you go out, and that's something you need to think about. But to put it into perspective, my first news job, I made $18,000 a year. Now I'm first generation as well. My parents were like, "I'm sorry, what? Come again? You're gonna go what and take what job where?" But the thing is that I have options, right? And so I think that my education gave me options. where I'm choosing to do this. And I could, if tomorrow I want to do something else, I have the skills where I can then pivot. I also have the network where I can then pivot and do something else. So I really think that as you navigate life, you know, you're thinking about what job, what singular job I want. I think it's much broader than that, because you'll have many chapters in your life. And I think that what makes our grads a little bit different maybe than some others is our ability to have options in this world. And so I think that's something that's a little bit more intangible, but something that should be considered.
Great insight. Terrific. These are the things that we want people to hear, because we're trying to distinguish Boston College from so many other terrific institutions that I'm sure they're considering. I want to remind all the participants here that if you have questions, just go to the bottom of your screen and just hit the button on the Q&A and continue to ask those. There was one that came in that I think would elicit comparable responses to what you just gave. One young gentleman wants to know about how did the Jesuit aspect of Boston College help you in your career? And, you know, if anyone wants to offer how it might differ from other Jesuit schools. And I just want to tack on something to what Meg was saying. I believe the statistic now for people who are involved in some type of community service prior to graduation is 89%.
I'm happy to jump in
No,
first.
go ahead.
Oh, do you want to go?
No, get careful. You got it.
So I think exactly as Howard just said, we're alluding to a lot of this already, right? Like this spirit of questioning, this sense of purpose, this sense of how you can do better for the world are the key components of a Jesuit education. They're the things that stick with me. And I actually think about all the time, because I totally say that I chose my career because of my time at Boston College, and specifically because of my community service experiences. It wasn't a certain class I was sitting in. I was in an organization called For Boston, where you volunteer for 4 hours out in the city, and then you spend an hour each week reflecting on that experience, discussing service, discussing spirituality. And I came out just knowing, all right, whatever I do, I need to make sure I'm giving back. I need to make sure it's something that the world needs, as we said. So I firmly believe that spirit from the Jesuit education, that emphasis on being in service with others, is so responsible for who I am today, the career I do, all of it.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of that a little bit. I think the Jesuit ideals that Boston College espouses to believe in, I think is what makes the institution the kind of place that it is. I think because there's a moral framing for a lot of things, when you have that moral framework, then when things are either against that framework or counterintuitive, you feel a sense of energy in the community. If things happen on campus that we don't believe fall under the auspices of what Boston College believes in, you get a groundswell of support around that. And that support always goes back to the question, is the institution and are the people closely mirroring that Jesuit ideal? I think we speak about it a lot at Boston College because those are the kind of people that apply to Boston College, people with a moral understanding, a moral grounding, wanting to see the best in people, wanting to see the best in the world. And those are the kind of people that go to Boston College. I think the Jesuits being on campus, I've had some of the most amazing conversations and also some of the most amazing drinks with some of those Jesuits, because they are a fun, loving group of men who really believe in the critical questions, the critical answers, not just taking things at the surface level. And I think those are the things that as you go through the Boston College experience as a student, if you didn't have that skill set developed before you got there, there was no way by the time you were finished your 4 years in DC that you didn't develop it by just osmosis, by being on the campus, being around the people, walking in and having these discussions. And I think that Jesuit framework is something that's critical to Boston College, that even at other Jesuit schools, I'm not quite sure if it has the same feel, but definitely at other schools, that moral framework that Boston College believes in is something that keeps the institution going and keeps those kind of people wanting to come to the particular institution.
I think also looking at it a little bit differently for me was that I am not Catholic. If anything, I went to Catholic high school, then BC, I'm more Protestant. However, the fact that the Jesuit ideals is so central to everything that BC does, that it allows room for you to really look at your own faith and examine it deeply. And BC is a place where I just feel like college is a time when you are, figuring out who you are. You're raised a certain way, and now you're saying, is that what my parents believe, or is that what I believe? And you're making everything your own. You're starting that process. And with my faith, that's when I was like introduced to just the Baptist tradition, and I was part of the gospel choir, and I would go to church with my friends, and was part of Black campus ministry, and it changed my life. It really, really created such a foundation. And although I went to church before coming to BC, it just was something I did. I never examined what I believed. And the fact that BC held space for that and encouraged it was really a transformative experience for me.
Thank you all. There's been several questions that I'm going to try to combine into a general area that I would like some of you to answer. Essentially, what's the experience like for people of color? Maybe we can talk a little bit detail about being an AHANA student and what that actually is. A reference to, a racial incident. I want to know, what are the services for students, support services. So it's sort of broad, but if you can make that a little more narrow with your answers, please.
Sure, I could jump in. I always tell people that Boston College is a microcosm of the United States of America. And I mean that in the best ways, and I mean that sometimes in some of the worst ways. And I think if you're going to, I always believe when we have these conversations with prospective students that it's important to be very honest, because oftentimes you will get the sugar-coated answer from institutions saying that, oh, it's beautiful here and everybody has rose-colored glasses on. And that's just not the truth. So if I'm going to be honest with you, being a person of color in America is tough. Being a person of color at Boston College at times can be tough as well. But I think when I go back to the previous question about the moral and the Jesuit identity, I think because there's a moral underpinning at the university, people are quick to address and call out instances and issues of racism and prejudice when it occurs. Oftentimes, the reaction from the university, people might think it could be better, and many alums feel that way, but I do think that it's important that when things occur on campus, that it is called to light when it does occur. So you will experience whatever challenges you will experience walking down the street as a person of color in New York City. You will probably experience it to some extent at any college you go to, not just at Boston College. I think what makes Boston College a little different is that a lot of the incidences that do occur tend to reach the media. There's a heightened sense around it, and there's like a historical underpinning of that. But I do think that as a person of color at Boston College, I was ready for the things that I experienced. I had a very clear understanding that I am a Black man and I'm going to navigate a predominantly white college and I'm going to have to deal with certain things. But I felt very comfortable that when things did occur on campus that I didn't agree with or didn't believe it, that I had the ear of somebody who would listen, take my voice seriously, take my concerns to the people that they needed to take it, and create some action around it. Even if it isn't the action that I wanted, I always felt that when things occurred, that there was some action around those things.
To add to that, everything that Akim said, but to add to that, so you might be getting brochures about the AHANA program. It's more than a program. It's a family. Like, I can't even stress, it is your tribe. It is, I literally am lost for words at the importance of that whole community during my time. It was my whole life at BC, a place where I felt seen, where I felt heard, where I just felt like myself, that stretched me and supported me. And when we're talking about that networking, that is it is like networking on steroids. If you see somebody of color that went to BC knowing that our numbers are small, that is your automatic friends, your automatic family. So yeah, the HANA program is so central to the experience of students of color on campus. And there are a lot of different, things there that provide support, a lot of people there that provide support, but a lot of like programs within it that can provide support, and groups and social events and things like that, that really are the foundation of that college experience.
Thank you. I want to point out to our participants also that some of the questions that are coming in, I may not get to, but so many of them are geared towards current students. And even though we have various degrees of people who are former students, you will have innumerable opportunities to be on webinars and meetings with current students to ask questions about culture on campus. And not that we're avoiding those, but this being alumni, there are a multiplicity of questions about and different ways of answering this, but a couple of you maybe take a stab at. Has anyone taken advantage as an alum of the career services, either as a student, and then going back as an alum, because many people don't know that career services are available to you for life. Like Andre was talking about the family. And specific to New York, maybe someone has an answer to, do you think that what makes BC students or graduates attractive to New York City companies, employers, corporations? What's the attraction? Some of you have been in the workforce long enough to know that. So just broadly get to that network specific to careers and the like.
All right, no one's gone. I would just say it's not just New York, it's all over the country. It's all over the world. Like everybody knows Boston College. And when you say you go to Boston College, it makes people's ears perk up. So it already comes with this reputation of your competence, your skill set. And that means different things to different people. But I just remember, even in my first job out of BC, I was an administrative assistant, and my boss went to Georgetown. And so he was like, "Oh, you're great, you're fine." And I got more money. Like it has this reputation that precedes it. I mean, that's one of the main reasons why I went to BC, is because I knew that I wouldn't have to do a lot of explaining or say, this is where it is, even though it has Boston in the name. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't have to just explain anything. I've never once had to explain the value of my education to anybody. It preceded me. So that's part of the answer.
I have to hop in because, Tom, you go first.
Sure. I would just say, with respect specifically to the offerings that the Career Center provides after graduation, just the other day, I, not unlike this session here, attended a Boston College alumni in media panel. There was a representative of BC who was the SVP of comms at the Celtics. There was somebody who'd become an author, and several of his books were, being made into motion pictures. So I think there are opportunities like that to hear from, whether when you're an undergrad or, alumni, and when you're an alum, fellow alumni, who are perhaps further along in their careers and have accomplished a lot. And I think that opportunity, networking is phenomenal, but even sometimes just listening and hearing what folks have done and learning a little bit about what their path was like, even if that's not necessarily the path that you're on, there's a tremendous amount of value in that. So sessions like that, especially now in this virtual climate where people can log on easily, it's great to hear what fellow alums have done. In fact, I actually feel that way tonight listening to my fellow panelists. It's pretty darn cool. I would say, and then, intangibly, in terms of, as Howard said, what makes Boston College graduates interesting to employers. When I was at Page, just 6 months after graduation, there were 5 or 6 of us in the program who were all recent BC alum, which was really exciting. And I couldn't help but think that there was probably something to that, something that, the program saw in us. And if I had to put my finger on it, I think that there's an enthusiasm that Boston College students have, and that's kind of fostered in your 4 years on campus. If you asked me to describe my extracurricular and academic experiences in a nutshell, I'd say they were eclectic. I signed up for clubs like I was running out of time because I felt very much as though I was. And I think that there's something that underlies that mentality. The desire that I think students on campus have to soak up as much as they possibly can during the time that they're in Chestnut Hill, that lives on even after you graduate at the end of your senior year. The folks that I worked with who were Boston College alum were ready and eager to do anything and everything that was necessary and asked of them. And when it came to it, we're prepared for the task as well, especially in media. That's something that's highly sought after, but I think that serves you well regardless of where you go. So I think there's something to not only the academic experiences that you have on campus, which give you the polish to communicate well, to think clearly and critically, but also just the enthusiasm to get after the challenge, no matter what it is. I think that's something that you develop and serves you really well.
I agree with all of that. To go back to the career services piece, to be totally honest with all of you, I didn't take advantage of the Career Center when I was at BC. That's probably not the answer Howard wanted me to give, but it's true. Like, I wasn't good at being proactive like that. But what's amazing is, my advice is you all should be proactive and visit the Career Center. But professors really ensured that you were getting opportunities in your face, even if you weren't doing that. So my first internship I ever got in Boston was in the environmental science field. And my professor had a panel of local Boston companies, nonprofits, different organizations that came. They spoke about what they do. They offered internship opportunities. And that was my first way that I secured an internship. So it happened right there in class, which is amazing. And now today, a couple months ago, I spoke to a group of students interested in social impact and speaking to like 3 classes as a part of our business school this month about social impact. So truly the Career Center is wonderful, but also you are going to get that networking, that access to opportunities just sitting in class as well, which is amazing.
Yeah, just one. No, please go ahead.
It was just similar to Kelsey. I did not use the Career Center. However, my first internship was through one of my theater professors that actually was like the internship that really started it all and kind of gave me the television bug and connected me. I had my first internship at ABC Primetime Casting. And then following that, another student who was a year or 2 below me ended up doing the same internship. And then just last week, I was Zooming with a student from her dorm at BC. It was very, very cool. And she was asking all these questions about internships, and she was a current theater major, and who should I talk to? And how did you get that internship? And I said, actually, just ask this professor, tell them Megan Lynch had this internship, and find out who the person was and who the point person is now, because I already know 2 of us that had this internship, and why can't she be the next one to get it? So it's okay if you don't go to the Career Center, but you should go. But also talk to your professors, talk to other students and friends, and people's family also want help. It's all just, it's very helpful. It's great.
Yeah, so I'd add on to that by saying, so I definitely was sort of a late user of the Career Center. I only started using it my senior year, aka when I actually had to get a job to pay off my loans after college. But I have to say that the Career Center by far levels the playing field. Knowledge is power, and there are things that, my own experience, as a first-gen kid was there are just so many unspoken playbooks that we're not exposed to. I didn't know that, someone can tell you, oh, prepare for a job interview, but they don't tell you whether is it a case interview for consulting, is it a finance interview for IB, there's certain nuances to the very, like how to navigate, those kind of things that the Career Center really helped me out with. Also, they've seen many versions of my, like CV, they changed it from, I'm like when I was doing a job for a campsite to the job that I currently have, and now they're going through some drafts of the one that I'm going to submit for, like law school, for example. So that, and then so that's sort of like how I used it in my senior year. But I know, since you guys are all just starting your careers now, I think there's many early ways to use the Career Center, because your career starts the day you step foot on that campus. So for me, a big thing was, I was always concerned about whether there were certain job opportunities that weren't accessible to me because I couldn't, afford them sometimes. As a poli-sci major, a lot of the jobs were, think tanks, things like that, where they were all in DC or in New York City. And so like I had to think about, okay, well, if I get the job, that's a good thing. But most other kids at BC can just say that, okay, cool, then I'll go to DC. But for me, it was not just getting accepted to the job, but also knowing that I could afford to move there. And the Career Center has something called the, I think it's called the Eagle Fellowship Program, where they give you a stipend. I think it's like $5,000 that pays for any unpaid internship that you find. So that alone equalizes the, like the playing field, because, now you can pursue any job that you want without thinking about that added concern of whether or not you can afford it, So I think that's sort of like a more immediate way to use the Career Center when you first step foot on campus.
Terrific. Thank you, folks. Let's see if we can also group 4 or 5 questions into one area and have a variety of you answer these. Using the city of Boston as a resource, when you were a student, that might have helped you in your career. That's one of them. How or did Boston College at all prepare you for life in the city that never sleeps? There's the intimidation factor. How do you get ready? I know there's a couple of native New Yorkers here, so they were born that way. But did BC do anything to prepare you for that? And just comparing, we don't want to talk about Red Sox, Yankees, but just Boston and New York, a little comparison.
I'll start. I'm not quite sure where this is going to go, but we'll see how this goes. The love-hate relationship between Boston and New York is very real. People from New York think they're better than people from Boston. People from Boston think they're better than people from New York. That's just the honest fact. And in fact, we're probably more close to each other than we want to admit. Like, people from Boston and people from New York are very similar. As someone from Brooklyn, I wear my Brooklynness on my sleeve. When I introduce where I'm from, I always say first, I'm from Brooklyn. And I always say second, that I was born, raised, and still reside in Brooklyn, and that there are not many people like me still left. But when I got to Boston, I really gravitated towards people from the city of Boston. There's a very salt of the earth, very grounded, very like realistic aura of people from Boston. So I really enjoyed that. And some of those people ended up moving to New York after they graduated. So they clearly realized that New York was better than Boston. But I also wanted to bring up the point of being connected to so many different schools in the Boston region was really important to me as I was there. I think Boston is one of the only cities in the country with such a plethora of universities, but not just the fact that their numbers are so many, but how good those universities are. On one weekend, I could be at an event at Harvard. The next night, I could be at an event at BU. I can go over to Northeastern for lunch with friends. And I built up not only a network of people from BC that I was really close to, but also built up a network of people who went to college in Boston that weren't at BC that I really gravitated towards. So there's something very connected even when you're in New York and you meet somebody and they say, hey, I went to BU. That you may not like them because they went to BU because BU, but there is a connection that having gone to a school in the city of Boston naturally creates. So I think being in Boston, I mean, from New York, I could be fine in any city, but being in Boston was really cool because I felt really connected to those people and really felt like that connection was genuine and that they understood the value of those two cities, New York and Boston.
Wait, is Tom, are you about to answer?
Go for it, Meg. I'll follow up.
Okay, sorry. This is to go along with being prepared to, and it's actually kind of based on something that you said, being prepared when you entered, the workforce or post-college life in New York City. And I think, as Tom mentioned, and as a lot of people have said, a BC student wears a lot of different hats. We are able to kind of adapt and morph and, do what we need to do for a certain class, a certain activity. We know how to juggle our schedules. We know how to be really busy, but really successful at being busy. So we get the job done and we go above and beyond. And that's kind of life in New York. When things go back to normal again, or as things kind of slowly go back, trains are late, transportation is an issue. You know, you are going up for these jobs, I'm going to auditions, all sorts of different things, and you are competing with the best of the best. But we're doing that. And I don't like to, not the word competing, but we're up against, our peers made us better at BC, and that's kind of how we are in New York. We know what to do, we know how to work hard, and we are always learning, as I said before. So we're going to just adapt and keep going. And I felt so prepared when I got to New York. I mean, I grew up in Westchester. I was used to coming into the city, but living in the city, it didn't, I don't feel like I dropped. I don't feel like I stopped. I feel like that's the BC life too. You're always going, whether it's for different academic purposes, social purposes, and that's New York. It's a busy, bustling, like, world in it of itself. And if you can succeed at BC, you're fine anywhere. In fact, you're going to be standing out because not a lot of people can do what a BC student can do. And it just was a seamless transition, I think, for me. But
I would certainly agree with all that. And just to add, I think Boston is a tremendous asset. I think being able to, whether, again, not unlike Meg, I was from Westchester, so I had some New York experience, but I wasn't a native New Yorker in the truest sense. So, being around a big city, not quite as big as New York, but a big city, I think was great experience for me throughout the 4 years that I spent at BC. And I found that, from my freshman to my senior year, I engaged with it and appreciated it more and more as time went on. I think what can't be emphasized enough is that access to Boston gives you access to professional experiences like internships. When I was a senior, I was an intern at a small ad agency called Hill Holiday downtown. It was great to balance in real time my academic schoolwork and, a professional experience. I think especially in my senior year, it was great to use that sort of as a segue or a jumping off point to entering the professional world full time. And I think that obviously, just geographically speaking, not every college is going to give you the opportunity to study and work at the same time. So I think having that possibility is pretty huge. And it was not uncommon. I was certainly not the only senior who had an internship. Folks work at WGBH in Boston. Folks work, in government at the State House, which is right off the T downtown as well. So having access to all those things, I think is just an absolutely critical part of a BC experience.
As a native Bostonian myself, I could say that only a New Yorker would consider Hill Holiday a small advertising agency. It's a huge multinational, but when you come from New York, I get it. I understand. Good time we're going to do a couple more questions before we end the webinar. I do want to remind all the folks out there that we send out weekly reminders to every student about all of the programming that we have. So I would encourage you to, and thank you. Some of you have given us great feedback already that you're thoroughly enjoying this and you're loving this and you're really appreciating the transparency and the honesty of our alumni. And, they started that way as students. So I would encourage you to really sign up for all of the things that you think are going to continue to give you the insight that you need to decide if Boston College is a good fit for you. Just because I want people to see what you remember at various stages of your life, and it's not a quiz, but it's sometimes easier to ask current students. Some of these folks had mentioned they were tour guides and panelists, and they're always asked about traditions. But would a few of you actually, now with your alumni hats on, talk about the things that seem to endure? There are some things that you had a blast at when you were a student, but some of the grand traditions of our university that have been and continue to be very meaningful to you.
I can start it off. I feel like there's going to be a version of this answer from many people, but I'm going to preface what I'm going to say by saying, I'm not a sports person. I'm not into sports, don't like watching sports, not for me. However, I would say that BC versus Notre Dame football games, tailgating in general, are the enduring traditions that I always come back to. What really sticks out to me My sister went to another Jesuit Catholic school that was not BC, that did not have football, and she is jealous every day of the fact that we have something that brings us back to campus too. Like, as you said, Howard, it was a blast when you were there, but the fact that this year, 2020, and the pandemic was the first time I had not stepped foot on BC's campus in 10 years. Like, having that tradition and school spirit to come back to and come together as a community, that for me, it's amazing. It's just something that I so appreciate. Like, we can talk about networking and alumni network and all that benefits, but going home to BC and just cheering in the stands and feeling like you're a student again is something that's just magical.
I think coming back for just events in general, whether it is an athletic event, whether it is a dance competition, whether it is an intercultural weekend, I think the ability to just get back to the campus and experience it. Now, for me, the first time I stepped onto Boston College's campus was 21 years ago or 20 years ago. And the fact that I have not stepped on campus in the past year, and that's the longest time that I've been away from Boston College in 20 years, it makes me miss it, and miss it more because I understand that the farther I get from that undergraduate experience, the more I yearn for that connection, for that energy. Those 4 years really set the foundation, and those traditions, whether it's going to a game or going to an event, it builds on that foundation even after you leave. So there's something about that reminiscent moment that I'm like, wow, I just miss being on that campus literally, because it is probably one of the most beautiful campuses in the country, but also the people and those events make it even more so when you have a chance to not experience it as often as you do.
I am going to second Kelsey on the sports. One of my mom's favorite quotes about me during a football game, she called me on the phone and I answered because I'm close with my family. My sister also went to BC, and I answered, and there's cheering, and she was like, "Oh, what's happening? Is it good?" And I said, "Guys, is it good? Was that for us?" And that's just, I mean, I went to every game. I did learn more. I did get football for dummies. But the spirit and the connection and just like the joy and the passion and like just honestly the entertainment and the performance and show aspect of sports is just so exciting. And the music, everything is great. I also really loved the Pops on the Heights during Parents Weekend. I had the opportunity to sing in the university chorale, so we got to sing during Parents Weekend every fall, and it was incredible. And then we were conducted by Keith Lockhart, John Williams. BC brings amazing people to campus. I can list a million traditions that I love, but those two pop out but there's just so many just fun events. And just the tradition, this is kind of down the road, but there is a tradition the night before graduation that the BC seniors wait and watch the sunrise together on their last night before graduation. It's very emotional and beautiful and special. I hope that tradition still continues because that was great. But don't even think about that yet, guys. You have a long way to go.
Any other traditions that someone wants to
I
pop in
think
on?
if you could indulge me while I stretch the definition of tradition slightly. I think if there's one thing I look back to my time at BC and remember fondly, the football games are up there. Those were such happy Saturdays and getting to be with your friends and supporting BC, especially against Notre Dame. But, I think even the mundane, like on a Tuesday, you go to Hillside, which is a small little dining hall on lower campus. And, I remember lining up like 2, 3, 4 lunches with people, close friends, acquaintances, folks you knew from class. So I'd sit there all day and, now no longer being a college student, I, do yearn for the opportunity to sit around and talk to friends all day. Just the fact that you had this community that was palpable, walking around campus, grabbing a bite to eat, that you'd run into somebody that you cared about, whether you knew each other super well or you just valued the little that you did know about them. I always thought those conversations were so cool, and those like lazy afternoons just chatting with people and talking about different things and learning along the way were tremendously valuable and really memorable. And I will say I count myself lucky, especially with those close friends, to still be having some of those ongoing conversations. I think if there's one thing that makes me proud to be a BC alum is the fact that I'm still talking to those same folks and still growing with them. So yeah, those moments of just hanging around, eating lunch together, I think that's those are some of the happiest times I had on campus for sure.
Okay, I'm going to finish with one last question, and if you all want to answer this is fine. It maybe brings us back close to full circle. Can you say that having had a Jesuit education has helped you in any capacity, or it's something you've used in your career path, in your jobs? We've given lots of illustrations of how it helps as a student, and we've heard about, many of you speak about that and make allusions, but is there a practical side to a Jesuit education in not just how you live your life, but how you approach your job?
I can start. I'm a lifelong educator. I started in the education field when I was 17 years old. I'm celebrating my 20th anniversary in education. And I think as an educator, that existential question that is kind of rooted in the Jesuit mission, they're always questioning of why, and why are we doing this, and where is the moral grounding? That is kind of the way I kind of do the work that I do. I'm always asking the next why, because when you dig and you have those critical moments of asking those questions, then you get to the meaningful answers. And I think that's always something that I think about. And I really think I fine-tuned that skill set at Boston College, because sitting in class, the question that was always on the table was why, and being able to figure out what that answer was has really helped me, even as an educator sitting in class with kids as young as 5, or kids as old as, or not kids, but adults as old as college-age adults. Asking that quintessential question why really is rooted in the Jesuit mission. And I think it's something that, as a result of being in that Jesuit setting at Boston College, really has helped me in my own career as an educator.
Any other voices on that? There's some different careers here.
I think in a little bit of a broader sense, the Jesuit desire to, as you said, to ask questions, but also this strong burning passion in whatever you do. You are excited to learn, and you care, and you want to do everything and more. And I think that I have brought that to really all of my jobs, whether it's an audition. I really like to take the time to kind of, break it down in terms of a voiceover audition. I get the script and I look at it and, okay, I'm going to take a Jesuit approach to this. It could be this, but what if it's the opposite, and how would it sound if I delivered it that way? And I don't ever kind of approach things halfway. And that's BC. I cannot just do it sort of. I have to fully go for it. Or else I won't do the thing. I won't let the friend down. I won't cancel a meeting. I will never be late to an interview. Unless something crazy happened, but all of those those values, those morals, those really high standards that I have for myself, I really attribute that to BC, to the Jesuit education, to that desire for knowledge, and to a strong sense of self-respect. And we're taught to care about others, but we also are taught that we bring a lot to the table too. And I know that BC gave me a lot of what I'm bringing to the table. So I think we just are so prepared, and, we just care about everyone. So that just kind of bleeds into every aspect of our life after BC.
I agree with all of this. I'm not going to get it totally correct, but there's this Jesuit concept, especially when I was at BC, that's like, you're not just in service to or for others, but you're in service with others. And I think it really speaks to this idea of shared humanity, right? It is something that's big to the Jesuits, and it's a part of our education. And when I put the through line of my career and the projects I've worked on, the places I've worked, like food, luggage, it all seems different, right? But everything that I've been doing is about connecting people, particularly globally, thoughts of empathy, again, shared humanity. Everything, everywhere that I've worked on has that at the core of it. And it really, to me, ties back to that Jesuit education.
Anybody want to have a final word before we bid everyone adieu? Yeah, good. We're good. Okay. Well, as I said in my introductions, in my nearly 4 decades of employment at Boston College, I can't honestly say that I've ever been more proud to be associated with Boston College, listening to our 6 graduates talk incisively, articulately, and honestly about their experiences. One of my responsibilities is to organize the National Alumni Admission Volunteer Network. And while I did not graduate at Boston College, I can attest to there isn't almost a time I could ever remember in all my years of asking someone who graduated at Boston College if they would come back, either virtually or not, and help or speak to a family about their experience to help them make this decision. And they always say, tell me where, tell me when. So I thank you all very much. Families, we know that this is an important time for you. Someone talked about, the stress factor, and I would say I would encourage you to speak to students and get more information on that. But look at these 6 people, evenings, limited stress. Look at those smiles. I think they did a great job. Everybody, good luck, stay safe, and see any of us, if, and the admission staff, if you have any further questions, and I hope you participate in more events like this. Thank you all, and good night.